I'm just waiting for it to finish doing the thing. I'm going to introduce the show real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you guys to introduce yourselves while I post links. There we go.
How to do this.
And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kevin. Unfortunately, Brian McKinley can't join us tonight. He wasn't feeling so well. But we have a whole new roster of guests for you this week. Um, I am going to go and post links, but I'm going to put my good friend John French on the spot. John, why don't you introduce yourself and get everybody rolling on that while I get links up?
Okay, my name is John L. French. I am a retired crime scene investigator, having done 35 years plus on the streets of Baltimore, lived to tell about it, and in a lot of my books I do. I'm a writer and editor of stuff, and currently a contributor to eSpec books and anthologies, and one of their copy editors.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go. I'm F. Deal. I was an English teacher, French teacher for 31 years, and throughout that time was writing short stories, fantasy, horror, science fiction. And currently, now that I'm with eSpec Books, I'm writing a lot of steampunk. I have a steampunk series set in France and some short stories in our Telltale anthologies.
Good.
I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido. I've written a ridiculous number of books or a number of ridiculous books, depending on which Amazon reviews you read. Um, Written more than 60 novels, more than 125 short stories, more than 75 comic books, and more nonfiction than I can really count because I'm bad at math. I've written in about more than 30 different licensed universes, as well as in a bunch of different universes of my own creation, most recently the Supernatural Crimes Unit NYPD series. And I have contributed to a whole bunch of the of eSpec's anthologies over the years. eSpec also publishes two of my novel series, the Precinct series and the Adventures of Brom Gold. And very much looking forward to A Curiosity of Cats coming out.
Excellent.
I'm Aaron Rosenberg. I'm slightly behind Keith since I'm just shy of 60 novels at this point and 250 or so publications. I write novels, children's books, short stories, role-playing games, pretty much anything people will pay me for.
And I'm Hildy Silverman. I'm an author and an editor, former publisher. I published Space and Time magazine for about 12 and a half years. I also still do editing on a freelance basis for other authors, books, short stories, etc. And I write primarily short fiction for anthologies. I have quite a few stories in the eSpec book anthologies, including in the upcoming Curiosity of Cats.
Fantastic. And we got everyone, did we not?
Yep.
Okay, folks, we were going to have Danielle Ackley McPhail join us as we usually do for these, but unfortunately, she's having difficulties due to this snowpocalypse that is currently going on in many parts of the United States, including here in New Jersey. So the rest of us shall do just fine. For those of you who missed last week or are otherwise wondering who are these people and why are they on a paranormal show, you're all contributors to a new upcoming anthology. There will be a link to the Kickstarter in the description called The Curiosity of Cats, which is a collection of short stories based or inspired at least by the writings of Lewis Carroll. So I don't want to do any spoilers for obvious reasons, but why don't you start? We start by tell us a little bit about what were you exploring in the Carroll verse, as it were.
Well,
I'll go.
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Okay. All right, now Danielle is a very good editor who has some really, really good ideas when it comes to putting together an anthology. You have to submit your idea, and she has to approve your story. So to use A Curiosity of Cats / Lewis Carroll, this avoids having 15 stories all about the Cheshire Cat. So you had to get things approved, and I must say, I think I've read most of yours as because she said she looks at it and sends it to me for various comments. You had I had to read your story out loud to really, really appreciate it. At first, I thought it was a good story. Then the second time around, I read it out loud, and I'm going, "This is great," because if you when you get the book, and I assume everybody out there is going to get the book. If not, why not? You have to read S story out loud to get the full effect. But when she put it out, I'm looking at, first I'm thinking, all right, what character in Wonderland or Through the Looking Glass? And then I remembered a long time ago, I read this nonsensical poem called The Hunting of the Snark.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, I don't think anybody else is going to pick this. So I basically wrote to Danielle and said, I want to do Hunting of the Snark. And she said, fine. And then my brain said, you really should consult me first. And
Traditionally,
Why
yes.
start now?
yeah, why start now?
Fair.
So anyway, so I went and reread The Hunting of the Snark, and I'm thinking, all right, what am I going to do? I just fell back to my default setting. How can I make this into a crime story? And so anyway, it's basically the bellman is fresh out of prison, had something to do with the railroad shares, and a Scotland Yard detective has been given an order: find him, find out what he's up to, and stop him. And the fun starts there. And I tried to include as many of the characters in The Hunting of the Snark as I could. And yes, I did put a cat in it because that was one of Danielle's rules.
That's
You
right.
had to have a cat. Every one of her Forgotten Lore anthologies has to have a common. Well, it all has a common theme, but it has to have a sub theme within the theme, like in A
A
Cry
common
of Hounds,
element, basically.
common
Yeah.
elements. Thanks,
Yeah.
Keith. Like for instance, in A Cry of Hounds, of course, every story had to have a gigantic hound. I wasn't in A Cry of Ravens, but
Cast of Crows. Yeah.
an Assembly of Monsters, in addition to having something from it being inspired by either Stoker or Shelley or both, it had to have an epistolatory element. So this year, the common element was a cat, and
Yep.
so I think she didn't reject it with an all caps email that said, "What the hell are you thinking?" But so anyway, that's like I said, I've read most of the stories, and they're all very, very good. So it's still time to contribute to the Kickstarter, folks.
Oh, yes, please do. We just have two more people to make it 150.
Oh,
or
it went
more.
over. It went over.
Oh, oh, okay. I don't have a computer, so I haven't been able to check. So I'm
Fair
glad.
enough. But I mean, folks, I've read the last book in the series, in fact, The Assembly of Monsters, and I'll just say some very good stories, some very talented writers, and last time and this time they're hitting all of their stretch goals. So you guys are going to get a lot of great stuff if you support it. So yes, I would recommend it as well. So who else wants to speak up about their story?
Well, so one of the things about these anthologies that's both fun and a little frustrating sometimes is because Danielle is great about making sure that, as John said, like we don't all wind up writing the same thing. It's first come, first served for a story to reference or connect to. And sometimes that means that if you're not right by your computer, when the call goes out, you don't get your first choice necessarily.
Mhm.
So you have to be willing to be a little flexible. In this case, I lucked out because I got my first choice. I managed to see her call go out immediately, and I didn't have to reread Jabberwocky because I memorized it as a dramatic monologue back in high school and
Love
still
it.
remember all of it. So that was immediately my first choice. I'm like, oh, I want Jabberwocky. And Danielle's like, done. That was it. I'm like, okay, that was the easy part. And then similar to John, I mean, when we did the first one, A Cast of Crows, where the motif was that we all had to have a crow, I managed to get Detective Dupin, which is the character from the Edgar Allan Poe stories, which if you haven't read them, they're the precursor to Sherlock Holmes.
Dupin.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Good job.
And they're fantastic stories, and I've always loved those. I actually taught those in English class. So I immediately wanted to do something that was reflective of that. I do a lot of mysteries. And so I did a steampunk mystery character set in Paris, named Philippe Huron, which is a very, very, very deep cut if you're familiar with those stories, and particularly with the movies that were based on them. It's a name that never appears in the stories. And his crow sidekick, Detective Dupin. So I have since done Philippe Huron stories for each of these anthologies,
I love it. Yeah, yeah, good.
which has been great. I love the character. He's so much fun to write. The two of them are. And so this one was going to be a case of figuring out how to merge Jabberwocky, which, if you've read it, is of course filled with completely made up nonsense words, which you can understand the meaning to by context, and merging that into a Philippe Huron steampunk mystery.
You did a very good job of it too, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a sidebar on that. When I was in grade school, do you remember the Arrow Book Club?
Oh yeah.
They had an anthology of the best of their teen writing, and someone had done a parody of Jabberwocky because his English teacher's name was Brillig. And
Wonderful.
and it was it was Brillig and the slithy nouns to gyre and gimble. But what I remember most was, "And hast thou found the metaphor?" his father cried with zest. "I see that thou hast got an A upon thine English tests."
Very nice.
Wonderful.
Very nice.
Oh, if you like Jabberwocky,
Oh, yeah.
everybody out there, go ahead when you're done with this, Google the Muppets Jabberwocky.
Oh,
yes.
The Muppets did a
I've seen
version of
that.
Jabberwocky.
Oh yeah.
That is wonderful.
I have
It's
got to
stellar.
see this.
Good.
Stellar.
So
what about
I
you?
was
Sorry.
sorry. Good. So I was one of the late people to check the email. I was
late
in the
Hildy
middle of
Silverman.
some things. So I had to go a little bit obscure. Instead of doing a bit based on Carol's fiction, I went with his nonfiction. He was a real strong opponent to vivisection.
Yes.
And he wrote letters to various newspapers, and he spoke against vivisection as a terrible thing. So given my preference for horror, I figured, ooh, I can make that work. So my first version, my first story, involved, let's say, a little role reversal between cats and a human doctor and vivisection.
Oh dear.
Which, yeah, was maybe a little too dark for the mood of the anthology, as it turned out, which is totally fair.
Yeah, Danielle
So,
talked about this a little last week.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Without naming names, just it was something that was good but too dark.
That was actually, it was me and one other author who I won't out. They can
And
out
they-
themselves if they choose. They did something else that was very dark. But anyway, I then started from scratch and I made something a bit more whimsical. I went with a ghost cat theme. So it's steampunk Carol and ghost cats. And it's a bit more lighthearted, but it still does address the vivisection issue.
Good.
Interesting. Ghost cats.
Ghost cats. And the story is called, I'm gonna pronounce this terribly, forgive me, I never took Latin, Corruptio Optimi Pessimi. So
I won't even try to guess.
I'm waiting for
don't
the
speak
spell effect
Latin.
from this.
It
So.
basically means the corruption of the most innocent is the worst. And it's something that Carol put in. I actually read through all his letters on vivisection and what he wrote about it, and it's a line from there. I took it.
It sounds like pleasant reading.
Yeah. I usually wind up being one of the last people to check the email just because I'm usually so busy, and half the time, like, I'll just take whatever's left over at the end. I lucked out
Mhm.
here. I actually, like Aaron, I responded early enough that I was able to actually have my pick. So I was able to grab the Mad Tea Party from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Um, the I've loved Carol's work since I was a kid, and I particularly love his use of wordplay. Both what he did in Jabberwocky, where lots of made up words that you nonetheless know exactly what they mean from context, to just um the constant wordplay that you get all throughout both Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. The banter and the use of language and the playing around with language is wonderful. The trick in writing this was the story I wrote is one of the famous lines from the Tea Party scene, which is say what you mean and mean what you say. And the trick is to do something that has the feel of the Mad Tea Party, but isn't actually copying it, because that would be wrong. And frankly, not that interesting. You want to do something that is inspired, that not just ripping it off, basically. So that was a real challenge with this. I also worked in a tribute to some older fantasy science fiction speculative fiction works by Elsprague de Camp and Fletcher Pratt called The Incomplete Enchanter, and people who have read those books will get the reference when they read the story. I also realized that I needed, if I'm going to keep writing steampunk stories, I need a steampunk character. My last two contributions to the series were standalone stories. For A Cry of Hounds, I did a story featuring one of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's less well-known creations, Professor Challenger, who is basically, if Sherlock Holmes was a complete and total jackass, that would be Professor Challenger. And uh, and I got to do a story with him, which was fun. And I did for an Assembly of Monsters, I did a sequel to one of Mary Shelley's more obscure works, which was one of her short stories called The Mortal Immortal. And I finally decided I need a steampunk character, so I created a woman whose real name is Emanuela Equistapace, but who goes by Signora Spada, which means Madam Sword, basically. She is a swordswoman for hire in turn of the 20th century Italy, but she works all over Europe. I have already done another story with her. There's going to be another Signora Spada story in an upcoming issue of Weird Tales magazine, and I've already got something planned for her for next year's Forgotten Lore anthology. Are we allowed to say what that's going to be, or is that?
She
No.
I
usually
have no idea.
does a-
I don't know what it
I
is.
think, I mean, they did
Yeah.
announce it was supposed to be this year's anthology.
Yeah, and then they bumped it.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
but we don't,
the-
I can't know. I don't know for sure if it's going to be the
Yeah.
2027 anthology.
Oh,
So
okay,
yeah,
no.
but in any case,
I mean, my
I
story's
basically-
done, so it probably won't be.
that'd be too easy.
Yeah, but she's a wonderful character. I really enjoy it. And in fact, I've also written a story with one of her descendants for an anthology Hildy edited last year
I
called
thought the name
Prism.
sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I was gonna, yeah, I'm like, that can't be the same though, unless she's
No,
really long lived.
that is her granddaughter,
Okay.
who is in the Prism anthology.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and it's the same sword actually,
Yeah.
but
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of trying to get story, I have one from A Cry of Hounds. All right, I'm a crime scene investigator, so I have a special affinity to Sherlock Holmes, who was also a crime scene investigator.
Yes.
And when Danielle told me what that Arthur Conan Doyle was going to be, the theme, I said, well, I want to do Holmes. And she immediately replied was, Holmes has been taken.
Oof.
Apparently there's one of the other authors is basically one of the top
Holmes author.
Holmesian writers, and she was very glad to have him in the anthology, so he got to do Holmes.
That would be Christopher
Yes.
D. Abbott. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I said, so I'm thinking about it, and the famous line from The Hound of the Baskervilles was, it was the footprint of a gigantic hound. So I thought, can I have a mechanical hound? Because it was the footprint, I'm thinking it was the footprint of a mechanical hound. And she promptly said, nope, that's been taken.
Sorry. That was mine. Yeah.
That's
I-
all right.
I got to the Clockwork
it
Hound.
turned out great because it gave me my steampunk ongoing character. So I'm thinking, Well, go big. Can I have an Irish wolfhound? And she said, yes. Can I blow up an airship? Because what's steampunk without blowing up an airship?
Well, what happened to
She
airship?
said,
Yeah.
yes. And so that basically, all I needed was another detective, and it just kind of flowed from there. And I just threw in as many Arthur Conan Doyle Easter eggs as I could. So now he's making his second appearance in print in A Curiosity of Cats. He's the one going after the bellman. And the novella I mentioned is a novella about Inspector Adrian Hope and Canine Sergeant Gracie O'Malley.
F,
And
what
of
about
course,
you?
John, if it makes you feel any better, I mean, my penance for having stolen the Clockwork Hound from you was I had to write the story twice.
Ah,
So because I ran into the same thing Hildy did, but not in a slightly different result, because I turned in my first story because it was a Philippe Piron story, of course, that I did, and it was focused on something involving Victor Hugo, and I kind of fell down the rabbit hole. So when I turned it in to Danielle, she wrote back and she said, "This is a great story. There's just one problem. It's a Victor Hugo story." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay. Now it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
is." So
and then
I
my
had to write
turn.
a whole second story, which is why there are two of mine in there, because the
Right.
Philippe Curon wound up being like a bonus story for it, and my Archie Huggins New York detective story wound up being the Arthur Conan Doyle version.
Yeah.
So
Danielle told me about that. And she said,
yeah,
well, that, the first story was going to be the bonus story. She says, I just need him to write an introduction. And I said, he explained what happened. Isn't that the introduction? And she said, oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. When she wrote it, when she told me, she was absolutely right. I mean, the minute she said it, I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, kind of. It was like 90% Victor Hugo at that point and like 10% Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm like, yeah, that's not. I was trying to figure out how to rework. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna have to give you a whole new story for it. All right. So yeah, so that was the price I paid for
I
sneaking you
had
on.
something similar with an Assembly of Monsters. The first story I wrote wasn't actually a steampunk story,
Well, yeah, there is that
Oh, well,
requirement.
which
yeah.
which was which I kind of blew the assignment on that one.
Yeah.
But she
Just
wound up
blew a
making it the
gear on it. Just blew a gear on it.
yeah. Well, it wouldn't have, there was no way to make that work. But it wound up being the bonus story in the hardcover, and I'm really glad because I was really proud of that story. It's a
Yeah.
sequel. It's a joint sequel to two of Mary Shelley's stories, to both The
Oh, cool.
Mortal Immortal and her novel The Last Man, which was a dystopian science fiction story.
Yeah.
Um, and I was really
Speaking of,
proud of it, so I'm glad it still made it in, even though it didn't actually have goggles or an airship or
Anything
clockworks or anything like
Unnecessary
that.
gears.
I think in those kind of situations, we kind of follow Raymond Chandler's advice. You said when you don't know what to do, have someone walk in with a gun.
Right.
Yep.
Left and
You
Dan
don't
said the
know what
same
to
thing.
do, have an automaton walk through the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
goggles. Backup goggles. Well, I've been having, I've been writing a steampunk series uh, set in 1843 France. So it's before the Victorian era that most steampunk is. But I've had a lot of fun with them, and I've kind of been, uh, I don't, I want to say just bathing in that entire milieu because I love these girls, I love these characters, I love this setting. And so, like when Cast of Crows came up, how could I get Edgar Allan Poe? Well, they were contemporaries, and I was able to use one of my characters there. And with the Cry of Hounds, that was the best one because I had researched Conan Doyle and found out that his grandfather lived in Ireland at the time, at the year. In fact, it was the year he died, but in that year, a hurricane swept over Ireland and devastated it. I mean, it was of such tremendous force. They didn't measure those things back then, but there were fish landing in the middle of the island from the ocean. I mean, it was just fields were flattened, cows were thrown around like you're hearing the tornadoes and everything. Um,
Wow.
so I had a good time with my twins there. That was a great murder mystery, and it was criticized because they said there wasn't any mention of Conan Doyle. Well, So when we got into the monsters, I took a little detour, and I was still set in France, in Paris, in Montmartre, and but I left my girls at home. But this time around, like you said, all of the good fiction was taken. And so I too delved into his nonfiction and found just this marvelous piece. You talk about hunting the snark, you will find it in this essay called Seven or Eight, or is it six or seven? I don't know, 6, 7 words about letter writing. And in in um, in one year, he published, or rather, he manufactured and made to sell these stamp envelopes, a stamp book, because at the time, if you were writing letters, you had a folder, and your stamps were separated by price in little slots, and that became a kind of like a wallet that women carried, but men would carry these because you needed your stamps for your business, and you had this. But he published it, or manufactured it with illustrations from Alice, so it was dreadfully popular, and he thought he would kind of capitalize literally on that by following it up with an essay on how to write letters properly. And the snark is amazing. It's just, he's so dry witted on this. But I got fixated because I had cats in the back of my mind. And instead of letter writing, I thought of litter and litter boxes. And so this is, I think it's 8 or 9 letters about litter boxes. And I was able to take my cats and put them on the airship with my major girl. And so I had a really good time writing that as they hunt down the um, the Valet des Coeurs, which means the Knave of Hearts. And they are after the the trans-ether retrotemporal system.
Sure.
Spell it out. Trans-ether retro. And so I had a lot of fun with that. I really did. As John said, if you read it out loud, you will have a very good time. Or
yes.
you could picture he himself, Lewis Carroll, the dry Mr. Dodgett, just snarkily giving you this lesson on how to control your litter box. And it was a lot of fun to write once I found it.
Yes. I think this might be, I mean, they've all been good, but I think this might be at least the most whimsical, probably the most enjoyable of all the Forgotten Door anthologies so far.
Well, whimsical
Just
pretty
from what
much
I've read.
is Lewis Carroll in a word. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
So if it's not whimsical, you missed
Yeah.
the entire instruction.
yeah.
Or mimsical, as
Yeah, fair enough. I'm just processing for a moment. Excuse me. You guys have a lot of concepts that sound a lot of fun, and I really love to be able to say, okay, you've convinced me I'm going to buy the book. But that would be dishonest. I was pretty much sorry going to buy the book when I first heard about the book.
Yes.
That's acceptable.
Yeah. No, these have been a lot of fun. It's been great to explore. Even I mean, I've only written for the 3 of the 4, but in each case it's an author that I was already familiar with, but it was fun to dig back into it. You know, I hadn't actually read any of Lewis Carroll in decades. And I was actually very pleased with myself with how much I remembered. In particular, I still remembered my favorite verse of The Walrus and the Carpenter, but which I still remember by heart. But the with all of them, it's been great to just go back. You know, it gave me an excuse to sit down and read all of Conan Doyle's Professor Challenger books, not just The Lost World, which is the one everybody knows, but also the 2 sequels, which were The Poison Belt, and then the really terrible third one, which I basically ignored because it was really terrible. But it was just it's great to not just do what everybody knows and what everybody thinks they know, and the pop culture imprint of a lot of these authors, but to really go in and dig into all the different aspects of their work. You know, not just the stuff everybody knows.
I think that's the element that gets overlooked when they start reviewing it as as a book, as an anthology. They forget that these were written in homage to these great people, and we went down rabbit holes, so to speak, to find all of this detail that we want to fill our stories with, and we're writing it for the people who do the same thing.
Right.
And you throw in all these Easter eggs that nobody's going to get because they don't know what you're talking about, and that's so frustrating. They just want a good story, but oh man, if you knew the richness, the tapestry, and it's not just a carpet that you walk over. It's a beautiful tapestry. It really is.
Yeah, one of the things that Keith and I do a lot of tie-in properties, and one of the things about writing tie-ins that we tend to talk about a lot on panels is that you have these guidelines, you have these restrictions and these structures, but that actually makes it a lot of fun because you're working within a world, you're working with these restrictions and these boundaries, and you have to find the story that fits within that space. And these anthologies work the same way because they have to be steampunk, they have to involve whatever the motif is for the book, they have to be an homage to the author that the book is based upon. In the cases of some of us who are writing the same characters over and over again, they have to fit within that character and everything we develop for that character. And then they still have to be this great, exciting, fun story that we can enjoy writing, and therefore we hope people will enjoy reading. And it makes it really interesting to do it that way, because one of the worst things for me anyway is when someone says to me like, "Oh, give me a story," and I say, "Okay, what do you need?" "Oh, whatever you want." Never say that. Never say that, because it's too much, right? Your brain just explodes. Tell me, oh, I need you to write this piece right here in this one spot that has this length and fits here and goes this timeline. That I can do. And this gives me that opportunity. So these anthologies are great because, yeah, Danielle's like, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's the motif. Here's the the author or authors. Here's the deadline. Hit me, here are the possibilities you have for the motif. Pick one, pick a story, hit me with a pitch. And you're like, okay, brain, A, B, C, D, Q. Right, here we go. It's great.
Danielle and I had that conversation. But some time ago, I was about the same time that Cry of, what was it? The Cry of Crows. What was it?
Cast of Crows.
Cast of Crows. Yeah.
Cast of Crows was coming out. She was putting out another anthology called Grease Monkeys.
Yes.
And I'm out taking a walk, and she calls me and says, "Where's your story for Grease Monkeys?" And I said, "I wasn't planning one." And she
That was
says,
your
"Well,
first mistake.
it's the time." Yes. Well, the time period is right within the stuff you write, 20s, 30s pulps type of stuff. And I said, "Well, let me think." Then I asked the question, "What did you hope to get and didn't get?"
I ask that question all the time.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I wound up writing what even I call the darkest story I have ever written.
Ooh.
It was so dark that I fully expected Danielle to, send that email with all caps saying, "What the hell were you thinking?" And so I had already started writing a much lighter in tone, which involved police officers responding to a report of monkeys on motorcycles.
I love that
And
image.
Grease monkeys.
Just got, well, they were actually gorillas, or apes, but because if they were monkeys, their tails would get stuck in the wheels and all.
Right. But you want the
But
alliteration.
anyway, so I had that done when she wrote and sent me, and she said, "This needs work, but it might be one of the best things you've ever written." And I said, "Okay." So, and if anybody's ever gotten a Danielle edit that starts, "This needs work," you know what it looks like. You actually have to read between the corrections to find your original text. But it turned out to be very good. But she said, "Send me the other one." And oh, and by the way, you're editing. You're helping me edit.
Surprise.
Thanks.
You got drafted.
Yeah, and
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not surprised.
I wound up with 2 stories in that anthology, so I can't
Yep.
complain. But it was sort of like I went from not really being involved to two stories and editing.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
Congratulations, it's an editing gig.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just writing a short story. Now I have two at the editing.
Yeah, it's tough to say no to Danielle.
Yes. Well,
Yeah, damn near
basically,
impossible, actually.
in those interviews, that sort of what prompted you to write a story for this anthology? Danielle told me to.
Yeah, we'll do it.
You're
Yeah.
doing something for this, right?
Well, I wasn't, but I am now.
Yeah.
I may have used that tactic to get people involved. In fact, I think that's more or less how I got my first co-host for the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was saying he was doing it. He came along for the ride.
Yeah. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. The I know Hildy remembers Mermaids 13. I think Keith, were you in that too?
No.
Okay, but what happened was I was at the Fairy Con with Patrick Thomas, and they had a mermaid swimmer. And I just casually mentioned to Pat that I didn't recall seeing any mermaid anthologies. By the end of the weekend, I was the editor of a mermaid anthology.
You know,
You go.
That was a fun one too.
this is what
Yes,
happens
it
when you open your
was.
mouth.
I was in
Yeah.
Apocalypse 13. I wasn't in Mermaids 13.
Okay.
I was actually going to say on a related note, folks, if you know who Patrick Thomas is, or if you're wondering who Patrick Thomas is, not next week when we're having David Lee Summers on, but the following week we will be having Pat on the show.
There you go.
David Lee Summers is also in A Curiosity of Cats.
Yeah, he was on the episode last weekend.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I actually will bring this up both for people listening and for all of you. The thing to realize is at the moment my channel is doing better than it has in 10 years.
Congratulations.
My numbers are good for a new channel. Unfortunately, not good for one that's been around 10 years, but I'm taking advantage of what I've got. So I have extended the invitation to everyone I've had on before, and that includes all of you. Please reach out. I'd love to have you on individually. Because if my success is built in large part on the great guests I've had on over the years, so I want to share my success with others.
Cool.
Well, when the Red Jack Society is officially out, you'll be getting a call.
And we'll be having you on with pleasure.
That's my Jack the Ripper tale. I think everybody needs to write a Jack the Ripper story.
And that's part of the Kickstarter for Curiosity of Cats, as well as F's next Twins of Belfi
Yes.
novel, and a reprint of one of Christine Norris's mythology novels. All of them are now part of the Kickstarter. We've hit all those stretch goals, so you can get all
Fantastic.
sorts of stuff.
I'm kind of disappointed only because she wants me to cut 20,000 words out of my story. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I honestly don't know how.
Get rid of the adverbs.
Actually, I was going to say James Elroy was once told that the last novel in the LA Quartet was too long, and he responded by taking out all the vowels.
There you go.
And you know what? It
Big
actually
vowels.
works. It actually works.
Vowels are overrated.
I
Totally.
have never been told to cut that many words out of anything, but if anything, I've been told to add things. I tend to write short, but
See,
yeah.
I've always had the problem all through high school and college of I'm not good at short.
Hmm.
Ah, you
Not
see, I had
everyone
the other
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the other problem. For a long time, I was strictly a short story writer.
Hmm.
I mean, 5,000 words were a stretch for me. And it's just like exercise a muscle, and it'll get stronger. And I've written a couple of novels with Patrick. I've just finished. I've got a character named Matthew Grace, who's a former crime scene investigator turned private eye, and I had this idea of him becoming head of security at a hotel, which held conventions, and there would be a series of stories. One convention per story where something goes wrong. So I figured, oh no, I'm going to put him through the ringer. It's one convention where everything
Everything
goes
goes wrong.
Oh, and Pat's the literary guest of honor.
Right.
As I'm sure all of you know, and I know from many years of doing conventions, weird things always go wrong.
Always go wrong.
Always. Usually not involving security, but every once in a while.
Yeah.
No, one of the funniest stories I know involved the head of security, although not directly.
Yeah.
Maybe not really appropriate for the show. If you guys are interested, ask me if we go after we go off air. It is pretty funny.
Does it have anything to do with the sprinkler system?
No,
Okay.
Okay, different
I
story
think
then.
everybody here knows that story.
I
That's
was
a
there.
I do
legendary
not
one, yeah.
actually. This one involves a dominatrix.
That okay, that could have been the same story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually.
it could have been.
No, no sprinklers, just a pro
No,
dom
the
and a very
the one we're
eager
thinking
young
of, the
man.
sprinkler was a very important part of the story.
No, this is more of a why you don't trust convention security to give you romantic advice type of story.
Oh gosh.
Well, that's probably wise.
That's
Yeah.
the plot of
Yeah.
a short story,
Right
Kevin.
there, yeah.
I love bouncing back and forth between short stories and novels.
Yeah.
I do both all the time. The needs are different. A short story is like a crucible. You just tell this one thing you want to do, whereas a novel, you've got all sorts of room to bounce around and fill things out and such. And it's fun to go back and forth because different stories have different storytelling needs.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
sort of found
I started-
my sweet spot in novellas.
Mm.
I started out writing epic, 125,000 word novels, and they didn't go anywhere. And when they didn't go anywhere,
Your fantasy was very good.
thank you. But I sent it in with Penn Writers Conference. It was my first time attending anything. I didn't know anything like this was going on because I was writing in this cell. Essentially, I had no idea what the writing publication world was like, and it was Gregory Frost who was running the Penn Writer Conference, and he was the one that took a look at my first 3 chapters. And where you usually get a 15-minute consult with somebody, I walked in for my 15 minutes of fame there, and he said, "Can you come back at 5:00?" And when I came back at 5:00, he was suited up, ready to go. And he said, "Come with me." And we went out to dinner with his wife. He was meeting his wife for dinner there. But I was invited along, and he gave me an hour and a half masterclass on how to write a novel, how I had to rewrite this entire 125,000 word novel. And the one piece of advice he gave me was to write short stories. He said, "I want you to set yourself a goal of writing at least one 3,000 word story every couple of months." And I ended up getting hooked on flash fiction. And I mean, when it was 100 words at the time. And writing those really helped me focus on what do you want the reader to take away? And it restructured everything in my writing, everything. And I was cranking out short stories like nobody's business after that. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I tend to use short stories as like palate cleansers, since I do, 300 to 400,000 words a year usually. So I'll do a novel and then I'll do a short story and then I'll go to another novel, and that gives me a chance to reset from the first novel. But the thing I love about short stories is that there are tones, there are point of views, there are stylistic methods that you would not be able to sustain for 80,000 words. Or
Right.
if you did, no one would ever want to read it, probably including you.
Yeah.
But for 5 to 10,000 words, you can really have fun. So, you can really play with them. And I've had some stories where I just said, okay, yeah, this is going to be a completely different style, a completely different feel from anything I've done. And yeah, with that size, you can really have a good time with it. It's just enough to really explore it and dig into it without getting so overwhelming.
So you guys are just reminding me of the awkward part I always have having writers on, because I have 2 novels, a nonfiction book I'm about halfway through doing the research for, and a short story I've been meaning to write for a while. It's like, I need to go back. Oh, really need to go back and finish the research so I can write my nonfiction book and go from there. But it's also, like you were saying, very much with the short story idea I have. I think it's a great idea for a short story. I can't see turning it into a novel. I think I
Yeah.
get bored trying to reach it that far, let alone anyone trying to read it.
Yeah, not everything needs to be a full-length novel, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I was on a panel for the MWA and as basically short story writing, and somebody asked, "Well, how long is a short story?"
Mhm.
And I said, "How long is a piece of string?" It's as long as it needs to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
good.
it's the Abraham
Very
Lincoln answer. You know, how long
Yeah.
should a man's legs be? Long enough to reach the ground.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
that's,
is
Danielle said for this anthology, Curiosity of Cats, that she wanted, the usual between 6,000. And I could not see making the story that I wrote that long.
Hmm.
No,
And when you
it
see
was the
it, you'll
perfect
know.
length.
It was, and I said, look, I might hit 2,000 words. She said, that's really short. I said, let me send it to you. Tell me what you think. And she wrote back, she said, this is hilarious. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, had it gone on any longer, it would have been yeah. Unless they brought in a guy with a gun.
Yeah. I mean, my story, not this story, but the one for Assembly of Monsters was very short, but it really didn't need to be any. It wouldn't have worked if it was longer.
Mm-hmm.
It was exactly the length it needed to be.
Well, and then,
very short stories can work well.
Oh yeah.
oh yeah.
Just
Well,
thinking
that's
of favorite subgenre. I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah,
I was
that's
just going
right.
to say
Go
the
ahead, Ed.
Carol's thing was the essay that I was basing it on was 4 pages. And so, I mean, there wasn't much to go on after that.
I was going to say one of the neatest things that's come out of this internet subgenre of creepy pastas and other internet specific horror, in my opinion, is you guys ever heard of two sentence horror stories?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And just it's fascinating when somebody does a good one to see how creepy two sentences worth of words can become.
Yep.
I actually have one. "I'll love you until the day I die," he said. "I know you will," she said as she picked up the knife.
Yep. Well, what they said was the very first flash fiction was Brautigan's thing on the Scarlatti Tilt, and that was 2 sentences.
Well, I have for people like me at least, I have the all-time scariest two sentence horror story. Really, it's one sentence horror story of all time. They canceled Doctor Who again. I couldn't resist being the giant nerd I am. No apologies.
You're in a room full of nerds here. You're fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
There
think I
is-
got
and
that
he's got
impression.
Dominar right behind his head there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is somebody on Facebook who has been taking snippets of conversation from Doctor Who, from various Doctor Who episodes, and turning them into recognizable songs.
Yeah.
The last one I heard was was it Safety Dance?
Yes.
You can
You can
dance if you
dance
want
if
to.
you want.
Yes,
And
I
it's
just sent that
basically
one to my family
it's done
yesterday.
entirely with snippets from various Doctor Who episodes.
Mhm.
Yes,
Oh, that's
Cute.
clever.
yeah, yeah. The first one of those I saw was the Carbon Leaf song.
Hmm.
That one was awesome, and yes, the Safety Dance one I just passed around yesterday.
My favorite is still Picard singing, "Oh, the weather outside is frightful." And in
Yes.
the middle of it, he says, "Shut up, Wesley."
Seen those before, and it's like, oh, and you come to think of it, that's another example of the really well done creepy. There's it was like one of those loot crate type things, except instead of just a random collection of doodads, the idea was to tell a horror story. And the series is a monthly box. It's called Empty Faces.
Hmm.
And I finished the first one, and there's a point in it where you're basically the idea is this person being haunted by this evil force, is sending you information and you're trying to put together what's going on. And at one point, the entity you're confronting um, speaks to you. And it's just a series of clips from all over television forming what it's saying. And it's so well done.
Mhm. Well, I'm old enough, and I don't know if anybody else here is, to go back to the late 50s, early 60s, when there would be these novelty songs where they would, for example,
Yes,
John, you're confessing?
I'm
Yep.
confessing.
They would interview an astronaut, but they would use clips from music, popular songs of the day. And for example, well, what happens if, the airline goes and he goes, I think I'm in trouble. And just little
Yeah,
clips like that.
I remember that was actually they were popular on a now lost genre, I think, the top 40 radio stations, the top 60 radio stations,
Right.
which combine basically because it included all kinds of music. You could have a country western song followed by soul, followed by rock and roll, followed by gimme, gimme, gimme that ding. And it was just, and it was they sort of looped like the top 10 and
Mhm.
then put other songs in between there. And it was just you know,
Good
something
party.
for everybody. And it
Yeah.
was now they have well, first of all, they don't have
Radio
uh,
stations.
oh, they have
Not re-
I can't remember the last time I listened to music on an AM station.
Mhm.
I used to
But
broadcast on AM long ago and far away. Well, not far away, but
You're not old enough to say long ago.
well, we're talking about the early 2000s. It was one of the first
Which is 25
internet
years
radio.
ago. So yeah.
I'm sorry.
Quarter century seems fairly long.
You've never ridden your dinosaur to school like I did, uphill in the snow,
what
both ways.
yeah, with the meteors coming down.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Fair.
And there is
Although,
still there's sort of radio. It's just all on the internet at this point. But
yeah. Hey, I was one of the first. Early 2000s, Lou Gentili Show, one of the first internet radio shows, and
yeah.
we were still an AM station, both legal in many states and possibly pirate in Pennsylvania and parts of New
Possibly.
Jersey. I can confirm it was pirate because
Right.
one, Lou's sadly no longer with us, and two, the FCC figured that out years ago.
I remember there used to be a radio station I listened to. Forget what it was, but it was a daytime. It was a sunrise to sunset station. That when the sun set, it went off the air.
Hmm.
But after it went off the air, there was some kind of pirate station that kind of picked up on the frequency,
Yep.
which was just as good, But
That might have been Kevin's. You know?
Or Lou's, more technically. I was the co-host. This was me doing the show was me trying to rebuild the feel of doing the show with Lou back in the days.
Mm.
Sadly, he was much better. Like, I need somebody else to talk to. I figured that out very early. Lou was quite good at doing shows by him, even an hour or two by himself. Although we often had guests. Sadly, I didn't know any of you fine folks at the time. Now, although I know John, and I bet some of the rest of you know at least one of the guys we had on it
I remember
one time, which was CJ.
the first show you had me on, I was having problems, and I wound up audio only.
Yeah. And you were actually like this, I want to say the second guest I scheduled.
I was early on with you too, where I had space and time. That was way back.
Because way back at the beginning of this, I had a retired police detective who had done a book on past life regression.
Hmm.
And then I remember I was looking for authors I knew that I thought would be good fits, one being John and the other one being Patrick. And I got hold of you, John, by emailing the one publisher and getting directly to you in my response and scheduling you.
That's how I found CJ. enjoyed his story so much, I wrote to Gary Levisi saying, "Could you please forward this to CJ?" Or
Where I just met CJ at a convention.
That was the easiest place to find CJ.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't miss them.
No.
Yeah. The first time I met him, I was actually at a table next to him at a convention.
Oh,
I'm so
wow.
sorry.
So
Yeah,
no,
did
he
you
was
get a word
great.
in edgewise?
You know,
There's the
that was
question.
that was fine.
And did you get a bonus fiction magazine?
I believe so.
I can't count how many Cthulhu 6 magazines I got from him over the years.
Yeah, quite the stock, yes.
Every
Yeah.
once in a
Yes.
while, I'm at a convention and I see one of CJ's old customers walking by, and I'll just go into the full CJ.
I'd like to see that.
Well, not here, but if you're ever at a convention, I'll do the full CJ for you.
I'll see you at a convention again sooner or later, I'm sure. Nothing else, I was debating trying to make the run out to the next Telltale.
Yeah, York, Pennsylvania. Shouldn't be too far.
Yeah, that's pretty good
Particularly
ride.
because I have families in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That
Not
helps.
quite
Which is
close
where
to
we will
York, but
be,
kind of halfway between.
where the book will be officially launching.
Officially
Yeah.
launching.
With and one, I think one of the bonuses in the Kickstarter is to be like a VIP guest at the tea party.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Right,
the-
nice.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, Danielle added that.
Well, I'm going to be having knee replacement 2 weeks before Telltale. So
Oh.
yeah, it might be a little much of a strain for me to do any panels or anything.
But
And
on the plus side, you'll be fully steampunk at that point.
I will,
Yeah.
Well,
I will,
yes.
yep.
Yep.
I'm kind of like the Bionic Woman on layaway, you know. They fix this, they fix that. $6 million, what the heck?
Right?
You'll be half automaton yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Ask them to put the little steam whistle in while they're at it.
Trying to figure out how to steampunk up my chair. There's a woman that goes to this, and she's on a scooter, you know.
Yep.
But her husband has done up the scooter. The one incarnation of it is the skeletal dragon. It's just
Yes.
magnificent.
Oh, wow.
When she goes down an aisle, everybody clears.
Yeah, if you're going to be in a chair, why not? If you got the ability and the money.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just
Back when they had the Steampunk World's Fair here in New Jersey, there were a couple people who were in wheelchairs who had them steampunked out, and they were amazing looking.
Nice.
Amazing.
I spoke at that convention for a very long time.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I love. I mean, the thing I enjoy
Mhm.
most about steampunk is the visual aesthetic, which is just
Yeah.
delightful.
yes.
And the look of everybody and of everything.
Creativity,
Yeah,
too.
it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
I love
see
the
so many-
music.
I'm sorry?
The various music, the steampunk
Mm.
music bands like Abney
Mm.
Park and Steam Powered Giraffe, and there's just some wonderful effects that they accomplish. It's not like, I know there's a German band that has trombones that shoot fire, but that's a whole other thing. And there's a group. Where was the group that was on Segways? They dress in robes and cowls, but they're on Segways, and so they kind of glide around.
Yeah, float in.
I think I've seen video of that.
Did the Segway
Sounds
shoot
fun.
fire or just the trombones?
But yeah, just
No, then the
but-
roads will
but-
catch.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this place has the Segway ones. They have these Dr. Seuss like instruments. That's really cool.
Wow.
No, you
It
know
is a
them.
really
I like
cool
music.
genre, and it inspires a lot of very cool creativity. The costumes that we've seen at steampunk events, some of the gadgets I've seen. Remember a young woman I saw at one convention who had like a giant steampunk looking and basically a steampunk gun that fired electricity out the end.
Woo!
And if you put your hand to it, you could feel it tingle. And from what I remember hearing from her at one point, yeah, if she really cranked the juice up, it would basically be a short-range taser.
Laser.
And then just
What I like,
for that matter, what we're here for, short stories, all the cool short stories and novels that use this
Yeah.
genre.
Yeah.
I came late to the whole writing the steampunk stories,
Mhm.
mainly because
Me too.
Danielle told me to. But
All of us. Yep.
I like it because it's our world, its history slightly twisted. You can
Yeah.
do things like, for instance, in Red Jack Society, Red Jack is that world's version of Jack the Ripper. So and you could do things like play with timelines a little bit. Like a certain editor would say, well, they didn't have this at that point of time. And I said, yes, but we didn't have it. They do.
They do.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what I like
Right.
doing is the opposite. I like seeing what science was available,
Mhm.
and in retrospect, what they could have done if they knew that it was possible. So, this is where, Ada Lovelace plays a pivotal role, although she's not a character in any of the books. It was her math that led to her poetic science. And this is where Jacqueline is able to create Monsieur Clock and her little ronrons that are in the fourth book. And sticking within and you talk about confines of a story, sticking within that reality, and what you can do with it. I mean, I researched the professors at the Polytechnique in 1843, and it turned out that they gave a list to them and they showed their life, and then one of them disappeared. He just didn't show up for the next semester after July.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? I can tell you where he was. He was in the hospital because I put him in my story.
It's always interesting to see what real life characters or events or
Oh yeah.
whatever was available by way of technology at the given time lends itself naturally to being steampunk.
Yeah.
It's a surprising number of things that just work really well, like
My
an
my
assembly of monsters.
Well, there's
I mean,
definitely,
Frankenstein is
yeah.
right there.
My second
also,
sorry, go ahead, F.
no, I was just going to say, I got a book called Androids, and it's all of the mechanical, like Babbage's Silver Lady,
Mhm.
those mechanical machines that would write your fortune, like you saw in the what was the movie Big,
Big.
Yeah,
and
big.
Yeah.
and they had them in actually they had them in the 1700s.
Mhm.
And I did not know that technology was that old.
Yeah.
The my second Senora Spada story, the one that's going to be in Weird Tales, it involves an automaton run on steam that is shaped like a human being that can basically pull a carriage along. This is something that was actually built.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and it was built in America. It was called the Steam Man. It didn't go anywhere, but I mean, this is a legitimately steampunk thing that actually freaking happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
And
always
as
the
soon as I
fun.
found that, I was like, I got to do something with this. This is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, whenever you find
I was
those little
doing
bits or those people, it's I also find that when you find those real people that you can actually tie in and say, "Oh my God, yeah, this person was alive at this time in this place." That's fantastic. It anchors your story.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
one of
Yeah.
the fun things about steampunk is that it's parallel to the reality, but we're still connected to it in various places. And that gives the reader something to look at and go like, "Oh, you've got the Wright brothers, or oh, you've got Poe, or oh, you've got Doyle or somebody," and you go, okay, now I see how this connects to our world and our experiences. It's just so much fun. Those are those gems that you go, oh, I can drop this guy in,
Yep.
this invention, yeah.
Of course,
I
you got to
was
be
on.
careful. You got to be careful of certain things. Like I realized very early on that I could not refer to this as a robot because that term was not actually coined until 1920.
Right. Yeah. You
Right.
got to be very
Right.
careful with those.
Yeah.
Yep.
universal
Yeah.
Yep.
robots.
But they were called androids. It had an E on the end of it, but it was an
I
android.
I used automaton, but yeah,
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 that was another.
yeah.
I was just on Madame Askew's book talk the other day, and someone was saying, "I love how you put Charles Baudelaire in there," and she was laughing because the scene with Charles at the beginning is that he's drunk, he's coming home, and he saw this dead crow in the road, and its legs were sticking up in the air like some kind of whore. And, oh, she slaps his face. But that's his poem. That's the poem Carrion, one of his most famous poems. But at the time, he was a 20-year-old lush and drug addict. So yeah, fun throwing. It's fun. Those are the Easter eggs. That's what
Oh,
Also
I love putting
I'm
Easter
sorry.
eggs in.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
My story, the adventure of the exploding airship, is full of Arthur Conan Doyle references. You know, either I named characters in the story after characters from Arthur Conan Doyle. And I just looked for reasons to, put things in there. And I actually sent Danielle two versions of the story, one plain and one with all the references in it.
Well, one
And
of
I
the
did the
stories.
same thing for the supposedly 2027.
Yeah.
Thing.
Mhm.
Which you're
Won't
still not
mention.
allowed to tell us.
That's
Yeah, I won't mention the author's name, but a lot of names are taken from this author's works.
Yes.
Well,
Nice.
one of the stories it's back here in the back of my head, but Sherlock Holmes was a contemporary of of Doc Holliday. If
Yeah.
when Doc Holliday was in college, was the same time that supposedly Sherlock Holmes was just attending college. And I've been working on something with the Fibonacci sequence. Then
I'm
anyway,
interested.
but that's a weird thing to note that. But yeah, there it is.
A
It's
good
interesting.
reference book, a good reference book on Holmes is Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street by William S. Baringold.
Mhm.
He has basically one of the accepted chronologies of Sherlock Holmes. What was he doing, when, and where?
Right.
Oh,
Well, I think that was what Laurie King used in her series, because her Mary Russell series is brilliant. It's
Oh yeah.
brilliant.
I love those books. And
Yeah.
they are my prototypical example of my belief that there is no such thing as a bad idea. There is only bad execution. Because those books are a terrible idea, an absolutely terrible idea, and they are brilliant,
Yep.
absolutely brilliant in execution
Yeah.
in every way.
now I'm particularly curious. I haven't heard of it before.
They're basically
Oh.
it's a young woman named Mary Russell who meets a retired Sherlock Holmes as a beekeeper in Sussex, and basically becomes his apprentice, more or less, and then later his wife, and they solve mysteries and have adventures together. Laurie King is probably as good or better than any writer at immersing you in a particular time and place. She is amazingly good at that.
Yep.
And that the novels take place all over the world at various points throughout the early 20th century, and they're absolutely brilliant. And if you just describe what they're about, it sounds like the most ridiculous,
Yeah.
self-indulgent nonsense. And they're fantastic.
Yeah. It's not like it's a Mary Sue. It's real
She's
stuff.
even named Mary. But
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's so much to work with these writers in this time period. I mean,
Yeah.
you just look at Doyle. I mean, there's some evidence he was involved in the Piltdown Man hoax that fooled the public for decades.
Yep.
Well, and he was fooled by the fairy photos.
The Cottingley
photos.
Fairies,
Yeah.
which
There,
Yeah,
having
and he
researched
went-
that
and he
case,
went-
it's like, man, you should have been smarter than that.
well, he also went full spiritualist after World War One. So
This is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
There's
There
a
was a-
museum in Doylestown called the Vampa, and besides fantastic vampire kits from the old centuries that people actually use, they're really cool. They have spirit boards, and one of the spirit boards there was Doyle's.
oh wow.
I grew
It was
up in
really
New Hope,
cool.
and I lived for a bunch of years in Doylestown. Sadly, they added that museum after I moved to New Jersey, so I've been dying.
It's not
Every
that
time-
far.
Every time I'm in Doylestown fairly at least a couple times a year because I have family there, but I never have the time to go make a side trip.
I
Driving
highly
for driving
recommend
me
it.
crazy.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I've
That
heard
sounds
good
wonderful.
things.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, in terms of the automaton thing, the most obvious example that jumps to my mind from this time period, I'm betting that all of you know this, but my listeners may not, the Mechanical Turk.
oh yeah, the chess
Yeah.
player.
Yeah. And that's I've always been a fan of hoaxes and scams, particularly relatively benign ones like that.
hmm
where it's as much a magic trick as a scam, I think. But it's such a fun story. And folks, we're already
Well,
over time, in fact.
a magic
Yeah,
trick is a scam that it's everybody agrees to go along with.
true.
Pretty much, pretty much.
As a magician, I'll be the first one to admit that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of my book 3. It's a wonderful magic scam. Playing cribbage.
Okay, then. We're actually slightly over time, believe it or not, which is fine since I'm my boss here, so it's not like I'm saying we had to stop exactly in time. But I do want to get wrapping things up. I do theoretically have work tomorrow as long as I can get out of the house.
You got to be
Um,
somewhere. Everything's canceled.
Yeah.
Not
my
I'm
work.
security. They don't cancel security.
Oh.
And I'm security for trucking, so yeah, they definitely don't cancel us. I'll probably have nothing to do all day and either bring in stuff to do research or probably work on homework, which would also be a good idea. But either way, I'll wind up doing something. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to plug? Obviously, everybody out there listening, go support the Curiosity of Cats Kickstarter. Buy it when it comes out. This should be phenomenal. We just had this episode and then last week's episode with various writers that are part of it. You guys can see it's going to be a lot of fun. Does anyone else want to plug something?
My new book, The Red Jack Society, will be available from eSpec. Publication date March the 1st, and will definitely be available at the Telltale Steampunk Convention. I forget if it's the end of March, beginning of April, but it's
It's
somewhere
mid-April
around there.
is the
Mid-April.
Oh, okay.
and isn't it part of it's also part of the Kickstarter?
Yes, it is part
Yeah.
part of the Kickstarter. So you can get a lot. You've got less than 24 hours left, I think,
Uh,
to join the Kickstarter and get a
36.
whole bunch of books
there are
for
36 hours left.
36 hours. So
Yeah,
a
it
day
ends
and
on Tuesday. So
a day and a half. So you've got a chance to get a whole lot of books
Lot of books.
for
And the
a
next-
very little bit amount of money, and you
I
get
got
a
a bunch of
PDF,
books last year.
but you get to keep them. You
Yes.
don't have.
Yep.
You don't. The river cannot take them back.
Yes.
And the next stretch goal was actually one of mine. So yeah, if we hit, I think 6,500,
yes.
it's Time of the
Oh.
Phoenix, which is my historic dark fantasy novel.
Hear that?
Yeah.
Don't make Aaron cry.
Yeah, don't make me
Get it
cry.
up. Get it up
My
enough
wife
so that
hates
his
that.
book is published.
Okay, and I do want to say as well, again, as I said earlier, John, of course, and Keith, you've just reached out to me by email. But if any of you would like to come back on and get your own episode, please just shoot me an email. I got weeks open at the moment, and I'm overjoyed to fill them up.
Cool.
And I want to thank everyone for coming on. It's been a lot of fun. It always is. If you just give me a second, and again, does anybody else have anything they want to add before I wrap up?
I
I
just
do want
wanna-
to I do
Go
want to
ahead.
mention my new book, Supernatural Crimes Unit NYPD, which is about a division of the New York Police Department that solves crimes involving magic and monsters. That is currently available from the Weird Tales Presents imprint of Blackstone Publishing in hardcover, ebook, and audio. The audio is excellent, by the way. It's read by a woman named Patricia Santomasso, who did a phenomenal job. So if you're an audio person, I definitely recommend
Very cool.
picking up that version.
Yes,
Um,
I read an advanced copy.
yes.
And it's wonderful. I'm sure he's changed some things since then, but
Well, yes, because you
it's
you told me to change things. John was one of the people who several people who have worked in law enforcement who helped steer me in the right direction with the first draft.
Fantastic. And we'll talk about it a lot more when we have you on in particular.
And I wanted to just mention that my most recent novel, which is part of the Twins of Belfay series, was rewarded the Critters #1.
Yay!
Congratulations.
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 Thanks.
Keith mentioned earlier Prism. That's the anthology I
Yes.
edited for Crazy 8 Press. Keith and Aaron are both in that also. It is what we would call spy-fi, if you like secret agents and science fiction set in a retro 80s world. That's the one for you. The first 150 people who pledged Curiosity of Cats actually are getting a free ebook of that, which is cool.
Nice.
So Prism is now available on Amazon and from me and Crazy 8 Press.
Yeah. Well, since I don't want to feel left out, my latest book came out in end of November, start of December, which is the 5th and final book in my epic fantasy series, The Relican Chronicles. which is basically Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets Game of Thrones with bone magic.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
shows
those are
like
all
this is
available for
always
paid
very hard on my wallet.
Sorry, not sorry.
well, you
Don't
know,
be sorry.
$10, you pledge it to Kickstarter, $10, you get everything.
It all depend on money getting paid Tuesday, and if everything goes through on time, then I'm planned on backing.
There you go.
But okay, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Tune in next week when we'll be having David Lee Summers, and the following week we're having Patrick Thomas, or did I get that backwards? But we are having more guests. We're lining up more. Please check us out. Check out the Kickstarter, which I'll post in the link in the description shortly. Other than that, if you enjoyed what we do, if you like what we're doing, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Maybe consider donating to my Patreon. I could always use a little more money. But that'll be do it for tonight. Good night, everyone.